Carlie looked up at the door to the roof, and then back down the hallway to her right, beside the open door. "This way. We're going to plan C, D, and E until we are out of here." As they ran to the elevator, Carlie yelled back to Philip, "Secure the door with the fire hose on the opposite wall. I have to pry open the elevator so we can climb down." "You got it," he said, slinging his weapons and smashing out the glass on the wall compartment. Then he unraveled the thick canvas hose and pulled it across the floor, attaching it to the door handle on the stairs with a series of half-hitches. By the time he was finished, a dozen creatures were pawing at the narrow window and slamming their contorted bodies against the thick metal. Carlie stood in the middle of the elevator and began prying the silver doors apart. "Get down here, both of you, and help me. This is too heavy to do alone." Eliza and the professor lent their hands until the doors were peeled back 18 inches. "Philip, can you find something to jam in between the doors?" she shouted under heavy breathing. He kicked open a door to a nearby office and quickly returned with a metal chair. Once it was wedged inside, Carlie removed her grip and pulled out her flashlight, aiming its beam into the shaft below. "We're going down there? Are you kidding me?" said Eliza. "Unless you want to stay here and be ripped apart by those piranhas, you're going to follow Philip down the service ladder. Once we're all inside, I'll release the door. That should buy us some time." "What about you, Carlie?" said Eliza, whose face was still pale. "I'll be right on your heels after I slow these things down." They could hear the metal door of the stairwell being yanked violently, followed by the sound of the small glass window shattering. Raw, yellow hands pawed through the opening, attempting to scrabble their way through. "Down the ladder, you all go," snapped Carlie as she ran forward to procure the remaining weapons off the dead agents on the floor. She ran back to the elevator shaft while Philip led the others down the dark passage. Carlie laid 3 rifles from the fallen agents on the ground and then readied her own MP7s. She steadied the barrels on the now rickety stairwell door. As the fire hose gave way from its wall mount, the door broke away from its shattered hinges. Creatures began flooding through the entrance. Carlie unleashed a volley of fire from both weapons, spraying the mass with head and neck shots as best as the fully automatic weapons allowed. 7 of them went down in the first volley, but were quickly replaced by a dozen more ravenous ghouls. Again, she fired repeatedly, dropping more creatures until both weapons were dry, then grabbed the replacements off the floor and continued the deafening spray of bullets, clenching her jaw with the release of each hail of gunfire. A shroud of gunsmoke roiled into the corridor before her, eventually coalescing into a veil of red mist where the bullets impacted the unending wave of attackers. The entrance and hallway grew choked with bodies, but more creatures struggled to climb over the mangled carcasses. Carlie kept waiting for the carnage to end, but the flood of creatures didn't diminish. She finished another surge of firepower and tossed the smoking rifles down while grabbing the last MP7. 8 more creatures had entered the hall, slipping on the wine-colored floor full of skull fragments, which gave her a few critical moments to finish them off. The last one that collapsed at her feet was a hulking brute with shovel-like hands. Like the others, its skin was jaundiced and its cheeks were sagging rolls of flesh, like the ripples on a beach. With her MP7 nearly depleted, and with no end in sight of the monstrous horde, she slung the weapon and retreated back to the elevator shaft. She lowered herself down, grabbing the cold metal rungs with her trembling hands. She removed her pistol and used the butt to slam the desk chair out of the way as the doors slid closed and darkness ensued. As she descended, she heard clawing and muffled shrieks at the elevator doors until the sound grew faint with the approach of the lower floor.